coping mechanism until the Steam release. I'm Invoduke. Hello and welcome to my third companion review for Legends of Kingdom Rush. There aren't many more new core mechanics to be learned from any of the companions. So if you are watching these videos just to learn about the game, make sure to watch the first two reviews first. Anyways, let's jump straight into his character. The Arcane Wizard at level 1. To begin, he has a mere 3 HP. I always say that a ranged character doesn't need HP, and that is mostly true here too. The Arcane Wizard is the perfect min-maxer in this regard. He has such low HP that any enemy is capable of one-shotting him, but it gives him an excuse to be stronger in other ways. Speaking of those other traits, he has 4 attack just like the Ranger, 2 movement speed, and 3 range. He has 0 armor and armor regeneration. He's actually inferior to the Ranger and Zapper stat-wise, but more about that later. After all, stats alone don't mean anything without abilities. To start with his passives, the main one he's got is Preparation. If the Arcane Wizard ends a turn without using any skills, it recharges every skill by an extra turn. This is an innate trait shared by all magic characters. I didn't make this clear enough in the first 2 reviews, so let me clarify right now. There are 4 classes in this game. You can see the class of a unit in the top right corner of the unit's profile in the party selection room. Characters like Gerald have a blocky shield on the border of their icon. They are members of the Mighty class. All Mighty characters have the Fortify innate. Characters like the Ranger have a curved shield, indicating that they are of the Athletic class. All Athletic characters have the Keen Focus innate. Characters with cogs as their borders are Crafters, and all Crafter characters have the Lock and Load innate. Meanwhile, Mage characters have a hexagonal border. They all have the Preparation innate. Passives that are shared between members of the same class like this are what I would call innate traits. Other passives are just that, passives. His only other passive trait is Arcane Replenish. Every time he uses a skill, it runs a 20% chance to instantly recharge that skill. Both of these passives are completely dependent on the abilities that he has, so I'll talk about how good each of these passives are as we go along. His basic attack is Arcane Ray. This deals his base attack damage as magic damage. It should be known that it deals less damage if he attacks from a closer range. The formula is unknown, and based on testing, there isn't a clear way to consistently get his damage output. Luckily, this isn't a problem. Just keep shooting from the max range possible to get the highest damage possible. That way, you never have to worry about the damage he deals when he's closer to his target. Although, there will be some niche situations where you may want to deal less damage, like when you try not to kill a specific enemy. In those cases, it's best just to learn each case over lots of experiences. Hopefully in the future, the wiki should have all the information you could ask for about the topic. Anyways, what's really nice about this skill at level 1 is that he is able to hit that oh so valuable HP breakpoint of 4. I've already gone over how useful this is with the Ranger's Poison Arrow. That skill was on a 2-turn cooldown, while the Arcane Wizard has this as a basic attack, meaning that it has a cooldown of 0 turns. So he can kill weak enemy after weak enemy each turn, which makes him really helpful in a lot of early encounters. The damage is also high enough to stack with other ranged characters, allowing them to kill a strong enemy in a single round when they combine their attacks. With another ranged companion that deals 4 damage, they can hit the breakpoint of 8, which is one of the most coveted HP breakpoints to hit in almost any adventure. This alone makes him a nice level 1 companion. Arcane Ray also has an epic effect that pushes enemies back by 1 hex if they are weakened. However, many enemies have 3 speed, so even if he gets in range to attack them and knocks them back, they can usually still run up and hit him with a melee attack afterwards. The most common utility of the knockback epic is pushing enemies into hazards on the ground. It also doesn't work on enemies who are rooted, so keep that in mind before relying on it. His second skill at level 1 is Magic Missiles. This skill fires 2 missiles that each deal either 1 or 2 magic damage, so the total damage this deals is between 2 and 4. Compared to his basic attack, you're sacrificing a guarantee of 4 magic damage for a chance to deal 4 magic damage or less. It might sound like a worse skill overall for this reason, but it actually has a lot of advantages. For one, Arcane Ray has his basic range. Magic Missiles has his basic range plus 2. If you can't reach an enemy on the first turn with his basic attack, or want to stay out of range of an enemy but still attack them, magic missiles is a way of dealing damage when you otherwise wouldn't do any damage on that turn. Additionally, the missiles randomly distribute themselves to adjacent targets. Sometimes, they just all aim at the same target, but they have a chance to hit adjacent targets. They will never aim for friendly targets like allies, but neutral things like scenery are valid targets. Assuming the player wants to use scenery like the explosive barrel, instead of using up all the damage of Arcane Ray on that scenery, you can instead aim magic missiles there. There's still a chance that every missile goes to the same target and makes no difference, but it runs the chance of sending another missile at the enemy, dealing slightly more damage than if you just hit the scenery. The first missile is always guaranteed to hit the main target that you aim for, so position the attack based on who is more valuable to deal damage to, which is usually the enemy. But exceptions can be made for times when it's better to stay further out of reach. Because this skill has a 3-turn cooldown, it takes 2 turns between uses to use it, unless you benefit from any of his passives. If you ever need to continue sniping enemies without getting in range, you can use preparation in between turns to send a volley of missiles every other turn, if not more often thanks to Arcane Replenishment. Overall, as a level 1 companion, the Arcane Wizard is among the best. He hits a crucial HP breakpoint using magic damage and can snipe enemies from an effective range of 7 if he needs to. Both of these things are rarely seen in other companions. However, it isn't always the best to use him in your party if you plan on keeping him a level 1. The Zapper also deals 4 magic damage with his basic attack, and has a range of 4 instead of 3. Lock and Load gives him 2 more range, so he can be more effective than magic missiles at sniping since that skill does 4 damage consistently. While not always better, the Zapper does seem to overlap with and outclass the Arcane Wizard at level 1 often enough that you should just pick him instead if you're planning on using your experience points elsewhere or not at all. But that doesn't make him a bad companion at level 1. If you're planning on leveling him up down the line, he's not a burden at all when you're starting out with the adventure. Speaking of leveling him up, the Arcane Wizard at level 2. Now he has 4 HP, 6 attack, and the same stats and everything else. Getting 1 more HP hardly means anything right now. However, gaining 2 attack is really good for a companion, especially because Arcane Ray now hits for 6 magic damage at max range, allowing him to one-shot tons of common enemies like Demon Spawn, Skeletons, Skeleton Knights, Vinepaws, Winterwolves, and more. It's really useful to be able to one-shot this many enemies, so that alone makes level 2 great, but it doesn't stop there. Magic Missiles fires 1 more missile for every level of the Arcane Wizard, so now he shoots 3 missiles that each deal 1 to 2 magic damage. The missiles themselves do not scale with his attack stat at all, but because he shoots 3 of these, he now deals 3 to 6 magic damage total with this skill. With luck, you can snipe and kill a lot of very dangerous enemies with the insane range of this ability, making it a semi-reliable way of killing annoying sniper enemies like Flarins or casters like Shamans. For his skill choices, you can either pick Frostlance or Teleport. Frostlance shoots in a straight line, freezing every unit in its path and dealing 1 magic damage to enemies only. Allied units can be frozen as well, but they take 0 damage from the hit. Frozen is a unique status effect in that it has no classification like other status effects do. It counts as neither weakened nor immobilized. Frozen units are unable to move or use any skills, but they do regenerate health and recharge their abilities, just like being stunned, but with the condition that they are encased in ice. This ice will tank a hit from any source, absorbing the full damage so that the unit doesn't take any. Once it takes that 1 hit, the ice is shattered, and the unit is back to normal. Frostlance applies Frozen to allied units for 1 turn only, so you can potentially freeze an allied unit to tank an attack with them and not suffer any damage. However, since they break free in 1 turn, the enemy has to be after the Arcane Wizard in the queue, but before the Frozen allied unit. It's a niche utility for this skill, not the main appeal. The main appeal is that you freeze enemies for 2 turns. As a glass cannon, the Arcane Wizard takes up a slot in your party that could be used for tanking. So, speaking in very generalized terms, you have less tanking options than you otherwise could have when you choose him for your party. But Frostlance now provides that stalling power by preventing enemies from using their turns at all. Unlike other stalling skills like Shield Bash, Frostlance covers the extent of the Arcane Wizard's range, so he can freeze up to 3 enemies at a time with this ability, and as a simple action, you can position him to optimize the AoE. Frost Lance takes 3 turns to recharge, which means that there is 1 turn where enemies can be free to move before the Arcane Wizard can freeze them again. However, thanks to preparation, you can dedicate the wizard to casting the spell, letting it charge on the next turn, and then casting it again on the following turn. This allows you to stall a line of enemies with 100% uptime. Sometimes, it isn't even necessary to use preparation. If Arcane Replenishment triggers, the spell will automatically be charged right after using it, buying the Arcane Wizard a free turn to do something else on top of stalling them for 100% uptime. A neat self-synergy with the Arcane Wizard is using magic missiles on a frozen enemy. Since each individual missile doesn't deal that much damage, it's hardly a waste to let one of the missiles shatter the ice while the rest deal damage. It's one of the best ways to damage an enemy through ice and kill them before they get their next turn. Overall, this ability is a contender for being one of the best in the entire game. There's so much that can be done with it, most of which is incredibly useful. His synergy with characters who can heal in combat is incredibly high thanks to this, as Frostlance can drag out rounds as long as possible to let your party keep healing. His other skill option is Teleport. This skill functions differently from most full actions. It has to be used at the start of his turn, but the Arcane Wizard can use any skill afterwards. This skill allows him to instantly appear on any free hex within his range. His range is 1 higher than his movement speed, so this allows him to get 1 hex closer to his destination than he otherwise could. Instantly appearing at a hex also means that he can bypass obstacles and hazards in his way, saving him from potential harm. When the skill is not a full action, thanks to being invigorated, he can move first, then teleport, getting a huge boost in his total mobility for 1 turn. One more thing to note is how Arcane Replenishment works with this skill. Since you can use any skill after casting Teleport, if Teleport triggers the 20% chance to instantly recharge, you can do another Teleport afterwards, gaining even more movement. This can continue to happen, though it requires increasingly rare luck. Most of the time, Teleport is just going to function as movement with 1 extra hex. While the differences between normal movement and Teleport are often small, the main utility for this ability is set up for his level 3 skills. Normally, you can't move before using a full action, but Teleport allows you to position the Arcane Wizard where you want him to be, then use one of his level 3 full action skills. It's also a way of bypassing exhaustion, since you can only move or use a skill but not both. Teleport counts as a skill, and it lets you use another skill after teleporting, so you can use Teleport to position the wizard and attack in the same turn even if he's exhausted. Being invigorated will invalidate most of the benefits of Teleport. So overall, Frostlance is often better, but Teleport is not useless either. It's still a valid, worthwhile strategy to pick Teleport in preparation for his level 3 skills. Speaking of which, the Arcane Wizard at level 3. Now he has 5 HP, 7 attack, 3 speed, and 4 range. You really couldn't ask for better stats to acquire going into level 3. 7 attack hits a rare HP breakpoint specific to Ashervan enchantresses. It leaves the more common 8 HP enemies at 1 health remaining, but more damage is still more damage. Magic Missiles now deals 4 to 8 magic damage, and with 4 missiles, you can practically guarantee that at least one is going to distribute to an adjacent target, in case that's what you want. His level 2 skills are unaffected by his damage stat. However, more range leaves a lot of changes for the character in just about every skill. Arcane Ray now requires him to be 4 hexes away from enemies to max out the damage. Frostlance now covers 4 hexes, so he can potentially freeze 4 enemies in one use. Teleport now brings him up to 4 hexes forward per use, and Magic Missiles has 5 total range. Combining Teleport and Magic Missiles can easily give him an effective range of 9. All this makes him a powerhouse in his own right, and that's good because his level 3 skills don't change his playstyle very much. They're both more situational due to being full actions and having some extra drawbacks. To start, Fireball targets any hex in his range and creates an explosion there, dealing half his attack stat rounded up as physical damage in a 1 hex AoE. Every hex in the AoE also gains a burning floor effect for 2 turns, adding more damage and applying burning to enemies. Enemies who have a weakened effect on them will trigger the epic effect of this skill, taking additional physical damage equal to a quarter of his attack stat. This skill has a 3-turn cooldown, so it perfectly recharges if you use preparation on the turn after casting it. If the skill instantly recharges, it can potentially have a self-synergy thanks to the fact that it applies burning to enemies, allowing him to trigger the epic effect on them using his own fireball. Overall, it's a nice skill in some situations, allowing you to set up enemies to burn and to deal damage to multiple targets at once. It's useful in the fact that the burning effect lasts for 2 turns instead of the usual 1 like most burning effects do. However, the burning effect on the floor is also a double-edged sword because your own units can take damage and be afflicted by it. However, as useful as its good traits are, it often pales in comparison to his other level 3 skill option. Disintegrate is the mother of all attacks. It has the same range as his basic attack, but without having its damage be dependent on his distance from the target. So, he deals the same damage even if he's just 1 hex away, and that damage can be massive. Uniquely, the formula for the damage has nothing to do with his attack stat. Instead, it takes his max HP, multiplies that by 2.5, and lets that be how much magic damage it deals to his target. So, the Arcane Wizard becomes a rare example of a ranged companion for whom you actually want more HP. If you plan to get Disintegrate and use it, it should be a high priority to upgrade the Arcane Wizard's HP with external sources if possible. If he somehow gets 3 HP boosts, Disintegrate can deal 20 magic damage, which is high enough to guarantee one-shotting every enemy and every boss in the game. The downside for this attack is that it leaves the Arcane Wizard stunned on the following turn. Planning ahead to use it when you know he will be safe is not too hard, especially since you almost always have removed an enemy from the battlefield after using this. Its base power without stat boosts is 13 magic damage, which actually isn't enough to kill every enemy like a Troll Breaker alone, but otherwise, it consistently kills enemies. You can also use Gerald's Rally to remove the stun debuff on the Arcane Wizard, allowing him to move again after using Disintegrate. Overall, the Arcane Wizard is an incredible companion. He's useful at level 1 and just gets better and better with each additional level. He also fits well into most parties because of how much raw damage he deals, allowing him to pull his own weight on the team from a safe distance. In particular though, he synergizes very well with companions who can heal themselves over time, like the Sasquatch on the Barbarian if he's using Frostlance. He also deals massive damage when combining magic missiles on an enemy with Weakening Curse on them. Any sorcerer unit can inflict this with their basic attack, making the enemy struck by it take extra magic damage for every hit they suffer. The first hit deals 1 more magic damage, the second hit deals 2 more damage, and so on for up to 4 bonus damage per hit. At least, that's the highest I've ever seen, because every unit dies to this combo. Magic Missiles at level 4 goes from dealing 4 to 8 damage to a whopping 14 to 18 damage, plus the initial damage dealt by the sorcerer's attack, all of which ignores armor. Instead of needing HP boosts to deal this much damage with Disintegrate, he can deal more damage from an even greater range on an attack with far less downsides. When it comes to stat boosts, HP is a huge priority if you're going to Disintegrate. Attack boosts only apply to Arcane Ray and Fireball, but are still useful because of how good an 8 damage Arcane Ray can be. Any further attack boosts are better saved for other characters though. Armor boosts are almost never helpful, so those should be saved for other characters as well. Exhaustion hits the Arcane harder than many characters because of how much he relies on positioning to get the most out of Arcane Ray. However, if you have Teleport, you can bypass a lot of these negative effects. Meanwhile, Invigoration allows you to skip out on needing Teleport and gives him even higher movement speed, so that should be a high priority to give to him as well if you have the option. He isn't really an XP hog, but it's still a very good idea to level him up, because his skills are just so good every step of the way. He's great in each adventure, hitting crucial HP breakpoints for some of the peskier enemies in the series, and being able to snipe them with magic missiles. Frostlance has utility in most maps, but is especially useful in overwhelming situations with lots of enemies. As a boss killer, he sets you up to win once you get to that stage of any adventure. This is one of the best companions in the game, competing with heroes in terms of usefulness. If you get him as a 4th companion in your party or in the arena, you're very lucky. And if you pick him as one of the original companions for your adventure, there's no reason for you to lose. Overall, if you use him in your party, he's going to work like magic.